There are the forgotten tales of economic glory, deliberate exploitation, and the profound transformation that turned India from a thriving civilization into a drained and impoverished nation. Today, we will look into the highs and lows of India's past, unraveling how it went from being an economic rock star to a nation left hanging by a thread. It involves economic glory, a sprinkle of deliberate exploitation, and many British colonial evils. In 1700, India's economic prowess stood at an impressive 27% share of the global economy, surpassing the combined wealth of all European nations. Fast forward 250 years, and a stark transformation occurred as India's share plummeted to less than 3%, casting its people into poverty. The question arises, what triggered this dramatic decline, leading India from economic glory to vulnerability? Adventurous readers are urged to buckle up as they journey through the dark and intricate history of 18th century India. The story unfolds with the death of Mogul Emperor Aurangzeb in 1707 CE, plunging the empire into a spiral of chaos and weak leadership. In this tumultuous period, regional powers engaged in power struggles, land disputes, and title claims, leaving India in a precarious state. Amidst this disorder, opportunistic British forces sensed a chance to leverage their unique advantages as foreign powers. Bribing and blasting their way into dominance, they reshaped the destiny of the subcontinent. The British viewed India not as a nation to integrate with, but as an inexhaustible gold mine to exploit. The following portions of the story will elucidate the complicated series of events that concluded in the deliberate destruction of indigenous industry, the implementation of onerous levies, and the embezzlement of India's riches. From the flourishing textile industry to the exploitation of cultivators and the subsequent economic drain, the dark chapters of 18th century India's history will be laid bare, shedding light on the factors contributing to its drastic economic decline. In 1707 CE, the demise of the formidable Mogul Empire Aurangzeb triggered a tumultuous era for the empire. With weak princelings vying for power and parading on the once majestic peacock throne, the Mogul Empire teetered on the edge of collapse. Regional powers seized the opportunity to engage in power struggles, land grabs, and title claims, further destabilizing the Indian subcontinent. The situation became increasingly precarious, leaving India vulnerable to external threats. Oh dear, the fragility of the empire reached a critical point in 1739, when Persian Emperor Nadir Shah seized the opportunity and invaded North India. The once glorious city of Delhi fell victim to the ravages of war as Nadir Shah's forces sacked its treasures and left chaos in their wake. This invasion exacerbated the delicate affairs, plunging India deeper into uncertainty and unrest. This period marked a dark chapter in India's history, as internal conflicts and external invasions compounded the challenges faced by the subcontinent. The death of Aurangzeb set off a chain of events that would significantly shape the destiny of the Mughal Empire and contribute to the broader narrative of India's struggle for stability amidst political turmoil. Amid the disorder, the British discerned a strategic opening, capitalizing on their distinct advantages as a foreign power. With a combination of bribery and force, they propelled themselves into a position of dominance with the subcontinent. Oh boy, India had encountered foreign aggression in the past, but the British presented an unprecedented approach. They viewed India not merely as a conquest, but as a bottomless gold mine, with unwavering determination to extract its resources incessantly. With a keen eye for opportunity, the British exploited the weakened state of the Mughal Empire and the ongoing power struggles among regional powers. Their entrance into the Indian subcontinent departed from conventional foreign powers, revealing an insatiable appetite for India's wealth. The sheer audacity of their approach raised eyebrows. Hold on, what? As they sought not just territorial control but economic exploitation on an unprecedented scale. The British perception of India as an inexhaustible gold mine reflected their intention to exploit the nation's resources to fuel their economic ambitions. Their actions would reshape India's history, systematically draining wealth and resources over the centuries. This chapter on the subcontinent's past illustrates the stark contrast between the British imperialists and previous foreign intruders, setting the stage for prolonged exploitation and upheaval. Before the shadows of colonialism darkened its prosperity, India proudly stood as a manufacturing juggernaut, captivating the world with its high-quality goods. In the 19th century, the American J.T. Sunderland acknowledged and lauded India's industrial and manufacturing prowess. Textile goods, renowned for their intricate designs and craftsmanship, adorned the global stage, while exquisite jewelry sparked with the brilliance of Indian artistry. Bearing the imprints of skilled hands, pottery and ceramics were sought after for their beauty and finesse. India's shipbuilding industry, extending its influence across oceans, crafted vessels known for their elegance and utility. The steel industry, dating back to the 6th century CE, produced the legendary Damascus steel, which was exported by Indian blacksmiths to distant lands, leaving an indelible mark on global trade. Holy moly, India's multifaceted economic brilliance was a testament to its cultural richness and technological advancements. The halcyon days of India represented an era where the nation flourished as a hub of creativity, innovation, and economic prosperity. Each industry, from textiles to shipbuilding, contributed to India's global acclaim, making it a beacon of civilization. However, these golden days would soon face a daunting challenge as the winds of colonialism swept across the subcontinent, forever altering the destiny of a nation that had once inspired awe and admiration worldwide. The advent of the British in India heralded a significant transformation in the economic fabric of the subcontinent. With their arrival, systematic dismantling of native industries unfolded, leaving a once thriving economic landscape in disarray. The British, driven by their imperialistic pursuits, strategically established a legal monopoly over Indian textiles, which would have far-reaching consequences for the nation. Long-standing trade links, woven intricately into the fabric of Indian commerce, were abruptly disrupted by the British. Their actions were not merely economic shifts, they were a calculated exploitation of India's resources for the sole benefit of the British Empire. Oh boy, the consequences were profound, altering the very essence of India's economic structure. The deliberate and systematic bleeding of India, as later acknowledged by American scholar Will Durant, emerged as a central narrative in the dark annals of history. Durant's assertion that this exploitation amounted to the greatest crime in all of history echoes the severe repercussions of British colonial rule on the Indian subcontinent. The exploitation was not incidental. It was a deliberate strategy employed by the British to maximize their gains at the expense of India's prosperity. Establishing a legal monopoly over Indian textiles was a pivotal move by the British. It not only dismantled thriving indigenous industries, but also shifted the economic power dynamics in favor of the colonizers. The once diverse and vibrant textile sector, known globally for its quality and craftsmanship, now became a pawn in the hands of the British economic machinery. The disruption of long-standing trade links further exacerbated India's economic woes. The British, exploiting their foreign power advantage, maneuvered to stifle existing trade networks, leaving India vulnerable and economically compromised. The shift in dynamics favored the British, who sought to extract maximum resources from India, perpetuating a cycle of economic drain. The consequences of this economic exploitation were far-reaching, transcending mere financial implications. It sowed the seeds of impoverishment, creating a stark contrast to the economic prosperity that India had once enjoyed. The deliberate bleeding of India became a harsh reality, a process that went beyond economic downturns, leaving an indelible mark on the nation's socio-economic fabric. In the eyes of Will Durant and many scholars after that, the British colonial rule in India stands as a colossal crime, a dark chapter in history marked by the intentional extraction of wealth and resources from a nation that had once been a beacon of economic prowess. The echoes of this exploitation linger in the historical narrative of India, a reminder of the enduring impact of colonial economic policies on a nation's trajectory. Motivated by their self-interest, the British decisively reshaped the trajectory of the Indian economy. Their actions included the systematic dismantling of native industries, the imposition of severe tariffs, the deliberate destruction of the Indian textile looms. Faced with competition, British manufacturers resorted to draconian measures, going so far as to break the thumbs of skilled weavers. This ruthless tactic aimed to suppress any potential resurgence of indigenous textile production. The once thriving textile industry, renowned globally for its quality and craftsmanship, faced a tragic fate. The British, through their exploitive policies, transformed it from a flourishing hub of manufacturing into a mere exporter of raw materials. This shift not only stifled the economic potential of Indian artisans, but also disrupted long-standing trade networks that had contributed to India's global prominence. The impact of the weavers, who bore the brunt of British oppression, was profound. The destruction of their looms robbed them of their livelihoods and eroded the rich cultural heritage woven into each thread of Indian textiles. This aggressive approach underscored the British colonial strategy to extract wealth from India rather than allow it to thrive independently. In this dark chapter of economic history, the British altered trade dynamics and left a lasting legacy of impoverishment. Their actions' repercussions continued reverberating through the centuries, marking a pivotal point in India's economic evolution and contributing to its struggles for independence. Adding insult to injury, the British administration imposed oppressive taxes on Indian cultivators, establishing them as the primary revenue source. The tax burden was severe, ranging from 50 to 80% of their gross income. This financial squeeze created a dire situation where cultivators owed more taxes than they earned. The economic exploitation was ruthless, forcing skilled workers out of their traditional professions and into agriculture. As a result of this exploitative tax system, a substantial portion of the population was pushed into a life of poverty and deprivation. Skilled artisans, once the backbone of India's thriving economy, were compelled to abandon their crafts and livelihoods. The oppressive tax rates and economic constraints created a mass exodus of skilled professionals into the fields. The consequence was the emergence of a vast population of impoverished peasants struggling to make ends meet. The once vibrant and diverse workforce was now homogenized into agricultural laborers, working under heavy taxation. The economic exploitation orchestrated by the British not only crippled India's industrial sectors, but also reshaped its social and economic fabric, leaving a lasting impact that reverberated through generations. In the wake of such economic upheaval, India faced the grim reality of a transformed society, marked by the exploitation of its cultivators and the erosion of its once thriving skilled workforce. The crux of British rule in India lay in its extractive nature, differing significantly from the approach of previous rulers. Unlike before, the British harbored no intention of integrating with the land they governed. To them, India was inherently foreign, providing a rationale for establishing an extractive colony. Rather than reinvesting in the subcontinent's growth, the British returned India's wealth to Britain. This extractive mindset became a defining feature of British colonialism, shaping the trajectory of India's economic landscape. The vast resources and riches of the subcontinent were perceived not as assets to nurture, but as commodities to exploit for the benefit of the distant colonial power. The consequence of this approach was a systematic depletion of India's economic strength and a substantial transfer of wealth to the British coffers. In contemporary terms, modern economists have estimated the staggering scale of this wealth extraction, placing the figure at a colossal $43 trillion. This immense sum highlights the magnitude of the economic drain inflicted upon India during British rule. The extractive colonial model imposed by the British left enduring scars on India's financial institutions, hindering the natural development and prosperity the nation could have achieved. In essence, the British rule was characterized by a relentless siphoning off of India's wealth, leaving behind a legacy of economic disparity and disruption. Apologists frequently cite British investments, notably the development of railways, attempting to counter criticism of colonial rule in India. Nevertheless, a closer examination reveals that the railways, far from being a testament to benevolent investment, actually underscored British involvement's exploitative and inefficient nature. Every facet of railway construction was monopolized by British manufacturers, leaving little room for indigenous participation or economic empowerment. Rather than serving the broader interests of the Indian populace, the railways were strategically aligned with the British enterprise's exploitation of India's abundant natural resources. The primary objective was not to foster local development or enhance transportation for the benefit of the Indian people, but to streamline the extraction and export of India's wealth to Britain. The railways became a tool of economic control, facilitating the efficient transfer of raw materials to British industries while minimizing costs and maximizing profits for the colonial power. The purported advancements in infrastructure, often touted as a positive aspect of British rule, were thus intricately entwined with a larger narrative of economic exploitation. The railways symbolized the physical connections between regions and the inherent power imbalance, with the British manipulating transportation networks to serve their interests at the expense of India's economic autonomy. In essence, the railways, far from being a benevolent contribution, were a stark illustration of how British investments were strategically aligned with the systematic exploitation of India during the colonial era. The British government's policies in 19th century India devastated the country's population, particularly during times of famine. The export-oriented approach of the British authorities, particularly the massive exports of Indian foodstuffs to Britain during drought periods, played a significant role in exacerbating the crisis. This economic exploitation led to a surge in food prices, making essential sustenance unaffordable for the struggling peasant population. The indifference exhibited by the British government further exacerbated the dire situation. Non-intervention became an official policy, reflecting a lack of concern for the well-being of the Indian population. Despite the looming humanitarian crisis, the British authorities showed little regard for the suffering masses. Even when various entities attempted to aid famine-affected peasants, the British government actively thwarted such efforts. Instead of embracing assistance, they worked diligently to impede relief measures. This callous approach, coupled with a policy of non-intervention, contributed to the catastrophic consequences that unfolded during these famines. The toll on human life was staggering, with an estimated 35 million preventable deaths resulting from the British-induced famines. This staggering loss of life serves as a haunting reminder of the devastating impact of colonial policies on the vulnerable populations of colonized nations. The preventable nature of these deaths underscores the potential for a more compassionate and responsive approach that could have alleviated the suffering of millions. In retrospect, the British government's role in exacerbating famines in India stands as a dark chapter in colonial history, revealing the callousness and exploitative nature of their rule. The consequences of their policies not only affected the immediate well-being of the population, but left a lasting legacy of mistrust and resentment. The tragic events surrounding these famines highlight the need for a nuanced understanding of colonial history, acknowledging the human cost of imperialistic endeavors. For more terrifying videos, click the subscribe button on our channel. This was today's episode of We Warned You. Stay tuned for the next one and stay curious and vigilant. Goodbye for now.